pro wrestling, what's the ultimate prize? It's not the money. It's not the fame. It's not even a giant gold belt. It's being the guy. The #1 undisputed talent on planet Earth. And back in 1979, the biggest prize in the world was the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. It was offered to a man who was already a king, a guy at the absolute top of his game. And in a move that is still completely insane today, he looked at the ultimate prize and said no. This is the story of one choice, a crazy refusal that changed wrestling history and created a what-if so gigantic we're still feeling it today. To understand how huge this was, you need to understand the man who did it. Nick Bockwinkel was not your average wrestler. In a time packed with screaming madmen and giant brawlers, Bockwinkel was a super smart, calculating genius. He acted less like a wrestler and more like a CEO or a rich celebrity. He was so well-spoken and intelligent that he made fans furious just by talking. His interviews were legendary. He'd use giant words that sent people scrambling for a dictionary. He never screamed. He spoke in this calm, quiet voice that was somehow more terrifying than any yelling. And this wasn't just an act. Bockwinkel was 100% legit. He was a second-generation wrestler trained by the legendary Lou Thez, a master of wrestling strategy. He didn't overpower guys. He took them apart, piece by piece, like a total surgeon. In the 1970s, he landed in the American Wrestling Association, or AWA, and that's where he became a megastar. With the greatest manager of all time, Bobby the Brain Heenan by his side, Bockwinkel was the leader of a group of bad guys called the Family. Bockwinkel and Heenan were an unstoppable team of brains and ego. Heenan was a genius at making crowds hate them, and Bockwinkel already thought he was better than everyone, so they were the perfect duo. Their interviews were as big a deal as the matches themselves. Nick Bockwinkel wasn't just a champion, he was the AWA. On November 8th, 1975, Nick Bockwinkel did the impossible. In St. Paul, Minnesota, he faced the founder and final boss of the AWA, the unbeatable Verne Gagne. Gagne had been the AWA World Heavyweight Champion for an insane 7 years. He was the hero, the icon, the guy who basically was the AWA, and Bockwinkel beat him. This was an earthquake in the wrestling world. It wasn't just a title change, it was the start of a new kingdom. At 40 years old, Bockwinkel was finally on top, and his reign was incredible. For almost 5 years, he held the AWA World Heavyweight Championship, showing how valuable he was to the company. The list of people he beat reads like a Hall of Fame. He took on insane brawlers like Mad Dog Vachon and the Crusher, technical masters like Billy Robinson, and even giants like Andre the Giant. Every single match was a masterclass. Bockwinkel was almost never the strongest guy, but he was always the smartest. He would bend every rule possible to keep his title. He was the perfect villain. You spent all your money hoping to see him lose, and he almost never did. His battles with Verne Gagne were legendary and defined the AWA for a whole generation. And you have to understand, the AWA wasn't some tiny indie promotion. Back then, it was one of the big three companies, along with the WWF and the giant National Wrestling Alliance. Its title was a real world championship. As its champion, Nick Bockwinkel was a world champion. He was the franchise player, the top guy, carrying the flag for one of the biggest wrestling companies in the world. He had it all: money, power, and a title he made famous. But in 1979, he got an offer for something even bigger. To get how big this offer was, you need to know what wrestling was like in 1979. There wasn't one massive company. It was a bunch of different territories, each with its own stars and champion. And ruling over almost all of them was the National Wrestling Alliance, the NWA. The NWA was like a government for wrestling, a council of all the top promoters who agreed that one man was the undisputed World Heavyweight Champion. The NWA World Heavyweight Championship was the single biggest prize in all of wrestling. The people who held that belt, the famous 10 pounds of gold, were legends like Lou Thez and Dory Funk Jr. The guy who held that title wasn't just a champion, he was the champion. He was a traveling warrior who went from territory to territory all over the world, defending the belt against the top local hero in every town. Being the NWA champion meant you were the biggest star, you made the most money, and your name was written in history forever. In the late 70s, the champ was the super tough Harley Race, who was the perfect guy for the job. The job sounded simple. Go to a new town every single night, have a legendary match with their local hero, make him look amazing, but almost always leave with the championship. It was a life of non-stop pressure, constant travel, and performing at the highest level imaginable. In 1979, the NWA needed a new face for their entire organization. They needed a champion with skill, credibility, and a perfect personality to lead wrestling into the future. They looked to the AWA and its super smart, arrogant, and brilliant champion, Nick Bockwinkel. The offer was made. The NWA wanted Nick Bockwinkel to be their next World Heavyweight Champion. This was it, the absolute top of the mountain. This wasn't just another belt, it was the belt. It meant more money, more fame, and more historical importance than even the AWA title. It was a chance to trade his kingdom for the entire world. It was an offer no wrestler could ever refuse. But this amazing opportunity had a crazy cost. A powerful NWA promoter named Jim Barnett showed Bockwinkel the travel schedule for the current champion, Harley Race. It was an absolutely brutal, non-stop nightmare. The NWA champion worked over 300 days a year when you included travel. It was a life of airports, hotels, and rental cars. It was a grind that broke the toughest wrestlers and destroyed families. And Nick Bockwinkel was 44 years old. He'd been wrestling for over 20 years. He had a family. He had a life in Minneapolis where he was the top guy but worked a much more manageable schedule of about 185 days a year. The offer was for ultimate glory, but it would cost him his entire life. Nick Bockwinkel looked at the two choices. One path led to being a legend, a spot on wrestling's Mount Rushmore, and the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. The other path led to stability, the kingdom he already ruled, and a life that wouldn't completely destroy him. He chose stability. He chose loyalty. He said no. Bockwinkel himself said he saw what the NWA schedule did to families and knew the price was too high. He made a choice for himself and his family, but it was also an incredible act of loyalty to Vern Gagne and the AWA. Gagne had made him a superstar, and Bockwinkel repaid him by staying, even when the biggest prize in the world was right there for the taking. He told the NWA he'd think about it, and then just never called them back. The wrestling world was in shock. Who says no to the NWA Championship? It was unbelievable. Can you imagine what his manager, Bobby the Brain Heenan, must have thought? Heenan lived for the money and the spotlight. Seeing his guy turn down the biggest stage in wrestling would have been mind-blowing. You can just hear him screaming, "Nick, are you insane? This is everything we've worked for!" But Nick's mind was made up. He was the AWA champion, and that was enough for him. His decision was quiet, but the impact was deafening. By saying no, Nick Bockwinkel didn't just change his own life. He started a chain reaction that would change everything in wrestling for decades. Before we get into the insane, what-if scenarios this one decision created, if you're enjoying this crazy story, smash that subscribe button and ring the bell. We explore wrestling's biggest moments every single week, and you don't want to miss what's next. One man's no created the biggest what if in wrestling history. Since Bockwinkel was out, the NWA had to find someone else. They stuck with Harley Race for a bit, but soon they turned to a flashy, trash-talking wrestler who loved the spotlight. A guy named Ric Flair. If Bockwinkel had taken the NWA title, the entire history of wrestling would be different. Ric Flair's first NWA title win in 1981 might have happened years later, or it might have never happened at all. The whole Nature Boy persona, the limos, the expensive suits, the woo, all of it blew up because he won the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. Bockwinkel's no cleared the way for Ric Flair's legendary career. The 80s belonged to Flair, but they could have easily belonged to Bockwinkel. Back in the AWA, Bockwinkel's loyalty was both a good and a bad thing. In the short term, it was a huge win for Verne Gagne. He kept his #1 star and his most believable champion. Bockwinkel stayed the main event draw in the AWA for years, even winning the title back when he was in his early 50s. But in the long run, did this loyalty accidentally kill the AWA? With Bockwinkel on top, Verne Gagne got comfortable. He had his champion, so he didn't feel the need to create new stars. This became a massive problem when a super charismatic powerhouse named Hulk Hogan showed up. Hulkamania was actually born in the AWA, with fans going crazy for Hogan's matches against Bockwinkel. But Gagne was a traditionalist and refused to make Hogan the champion, booking frustrating endings where Hogan would win, only for the decision to be reversed. Frustrated, Hogan left for the WWF, where Vince McMahon immediately made him champion and built a global empire around him. If Bockwinkel had left in 1979, would Gagne have been desperate enough to make Hogan his top guy? It's one of wrestling's biggest mysteries. As for Bockwinkel's legacy, he's known as an all-time great, but there's always a but. Wrestling experts know he was a genius, but he's not a household name like Hogan or Flair. That NWA title was the key to that next level of fame. Instead, his legacy is forever tied to this one decision, making him wrestling's ultimate what if. So, let's jump into the wrestling multiverse and imagine what would have happened if Nick Bockwinkel had said yes. Picture it, NWA World Champion Nick Bockwinkel in 1980, the brilliant bad guy, with Bobby Heenan traveling the world. Imagine the promos he would have cut on dusty roads in Atlanta. Imagine the technical wrestling masterpieces he would have had with Jack Briscoe in St. Louis or a young Ricky Steamboat. The possibilities are absolutely insane. A Bockwinkel NWA title reign would have been completely different from anything before it. And what about Ric Flair? Would he have just been a regional star? Would the Four Horsemen have ever even existed? And what about the AWA? With Bockwinkel gone, there would be a giant hole at the top. Verne Gagne would have been in crisis mode. He would have been forced to look at Hulk Hogan and the insane crowds he was drawing. A world where Hulk Hogan is the long-term AWA champion is a crazy alternate reality. Could a Hogan-led AWA have been a real threat to Vince McMahon's WWF? Could Hulkamania have been born in the AWA instead? The entire wrestling war of the 1980s could have been completely different. Nick Bockwinkel's story isn't a sad one. It's a story about a guy who was offered two kinds of success and chose the one that was right for him. He chose a legendary career as the king of his own world over the brutal, globe-trotting life of an emperor. He chose loyalty over what anyone else would call the ultimate prize. There's no right or wrong answer. It just shows he was a man who stood by his principles. His legacy is two things. He's remembered as a four-time AWA World Champion and one of the smartest wrestlers to ever live. But he's also remembered for the championship he said no to. The what if of Nick Bockwinkel's 1979 decision isn't just a small detail in wrestling history. It's a main chapter. It's a choice that helped create the careers of Ric Flair and Hulk Hogan, changed the future of the NWA and the AWA, and reshaped the entire sport we know today. He was offered the world, and by turning it down, he changed it forever.